Is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio, Arut Sheva, and the show is simulcasted as Messiah Hour on YouTube. You can email me at messiahhour@gmail.com. Our guest this afternoon is the founder and the head of Israel Resource News Agency. He's been on my program before. It's always great to have on Mr. David Bedein. Mr. Bedein, how are you doing out there?
Thank you very much. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. Again, great to have you on. And one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on today is because you're heavily involved with a petition to condemn UNRWA's shocking call to boycott the Jerusalem Post. Tell us a bit, for those who don't know, why there's even a consideration to boycott the Jerusalem Post.
First of all, there shouldn't be a petition. Petitions are silly. If you want to make your voice heard in the world, you write individual letters. Petitions are silly. Knock them out.
Okay.
Now, the issue is like this. The Jerusalem Post published a piece by Bassem Eid, independent of our agency, who picked up on the idea of the necessity for reforming UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency. And basically, he loves some basic issues, like UNRWA should have proper auditing, UNRWA should be involved in resettling refugees, UNRWA should be knocking out any people who are connected with Hamas, and most importantly, UNRWA should be advancing peace like any other United Nations agency does. Now, the people what they did, this is on December 2nd, the day that Bassem flew to London. He was one of three people. I was one, Dr. Arnold Gross was the other, and he was a third. We were invited by the Parliament in London to testify about the situation of UNRWA. Okay? And what's serious here is, and this is the amazing story, is that instead of the Jerusalem Post of UNRWA taking the criticism seriously, but from three people who have conduct scholarly work on UNRWA, they attacked the Jerusalem Post for daring to publish the piece, and without UNRWA's input. Now, UNRWA is always invited to write op-eds even for my agency, but they wouldn't do so. Instead, they attacked the Jerusalem Post. And again, if you think that UNRWA has done something wrong, the address is not Samantha Powers at the UN, because the UN gives no money to UNRWA. That's something our agency, Israel Resource News Agency, working with the Center for Near East Policy Research, has worked for 27 years on the issue of UNRWA. And to our surprise, we were able to find out that UNRWA gives no money that UN gives no money to UNRWA. UNRWA gets its money from the donor nations. Now, in my book, Roadblock to Peace, UNRWA is a roadblock to peace, we show who are the main donors of UNRWA, and they're the people to write to, not the UN. The UN could care less. The UN has no influence. But the United States, which gives 25% of the budget, the European Union, which gives another 25% of the budget, the UK, which gives 15% of the budget, and all the Scandinavian countries, give each 15% of the budget. Canada gives a very small percentage. However, Canada is the chairman of something called the Refugee Working Group, which is basically the informal association of countries that give money to UNRWA. Now, if you think what UNRWA has done is wrong, you write to those countries. You write to the foreign relations agencies in the parliaments, and in this case, the U.S. Congress, and they're the people. It's easy to find out who the foreign relations people are, and those are the people you write clear, short, articulate letters. The whole scandal is on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. UNRWA basically works to perpetuate the issue of refugeehood and suffering in refugee camps, and as Abba even told me in an interview 20 years ago, and it's in his book about his life in working in the UN, he said in 1958, Abba Ibn, who was Israel's first ambassador to the United Nations, that UNRWA is a dagger in the heart of Israel, which causes it to bleed all the time. And again, the UN is not about to take the dagger out, but the donor nations can put some supervision over what they do.
Okay, in regards to UNRWA, I wanted to know if this is, I have a funny feeling it's not, but is this the first time they've called for a boycott of a Jewish newspaper?
First of all, there's no precedent. My colleagues at UN Watch, check this out, there's never a precedent that a UN agency has ever attacked the media in such a way.
Wow.
Never happened. Never happened before.
Now, so the fact that it's happening now, does that scare you, since you've been involved with the media for such a long time, that they're actually called for a boycott?
Scare? Are you kidding me? It's the best thing that could possibly happen, because it shows a certain desperation on behalf of a supposed humanitarian agency. If they can't take criticism, then they can't take a proud Palestinian Arab writing on the importance of reforming UNRWA. then there's something there's something rotten in Denmark. There's something rotten in I'm going to give you a new expression. There's something rotten in Ramallah.
Right. There you
and
go.
that's the story.
Well, UNRWA themselves, you said they've been around for a long time. What have some of the things they've done that has not been exactly helping the peace process? Tell listeners
Well,
about that.
let's look at a few egregious issues. Number one, UNRWA has adopted a curriculum, which is a curriculum based on jihad, liberation of Palestine, martyrdom, and the elimination of Israel from anyone's consciousness as a real state. Now, this is a UN agency. Israel's been a member of the United Nations since 1949, and UNRWA drives home into the minds of 492,000 children who learn in UNRWA schools that Israel not only doesn't exist, but that Zionism and the Jews must be driven out of the land. Now, that's not something coming out of the Arab League, which would be bad enough, but this is coming out of a UN agency supported by the U.S., the EU, and 38 other democratic nations. Hello, good morning, Vietnam. This is a very difficult issue.
Now, again, if you're listening to us right now, we're speaking with David Bedein, who is the founder and head of Israel News Resource Agency. This is Protestant Israel National Radio. You mentioned the donors to UNRWA and how they get their money. The typical donor, if it's an individual donor, what is his profile, his makeup, his political agenda? Where's he coming from?
The donor is very clear. The donor nations are nations that want to see peace in the Middle East. They want to see a better life for the refugees. They don't want to have any, and they want to see that all humanitarian issues get solved. And UNRWA presents, if you look on the UNRWA website, you'll be inspired to send them money. UNRWA.org. You'll see how serious and how good it is and how wonderful they are. And you couldn't imagine, you couldn't dream that they are actually in the midst of helping all these children. Like, for example, they show children in sports games, right? And how wonderful it is. They're sponsoring to learn how to swim and how to play basketball, how to play soccer, and how to play all kinds of other games. But you don't know on the website that, by the way, these games are named for people who murdered Jews. Hello, and these games are also named for the villages they came from. Now, this is very important. The children are forced to go to schools and to sit according to where they came from in 48. I've been uncovering this since 1972. All right, now I've been in Israel since 1970. I got involved with this right away when I came to Israel in 1970. At that time, by the way, the UNRWA issue was thought of as a clear left-wing issue. Golda Meir used to say those of us who are concerned about it were a bunch of left-wing peaceniks who don't care about Israel. Now they call us a bunch of right-wing people. Actually, the funniest thing, if you want to hear about how I've been described, at that time, 40 years ago, when I made a presentation about UNRWA at the Hebrew University, some of you were thinking, let us get out of here. So when I did 40 years later, I made the same presentation at Hebrew University. So you're thinking right-wing. The one thing I said to the girls in the audience, be careful, I stink. Mafriach. But the point is, I know these girls. I mean, I'm married with 6 kids, 2 grandchildren, and who knows what to come with. Lots of white hair. I used to have red hair and to be very, very, wow. And I talked about this as an issue of peace. However, the Israeli left wing has abandoned this issue because it's much too complicated. Much easier for them to say, give them West Bank, Gaza, and a sliver in Jerusalem, and then there'll be peace. Except for one thing. The one most important aspect from the Palestinian Authority point of view and the PLO point of view is that the right of return issue has to continue. And let me give you a scooperoonie here on your show. You ready for a scoop? Can I have a drum roll, please?
Oh, yeah. Let's
okay, now.
Go ahead.
Okay, now. On December 8th, 1993, 3 months into what's called the peace process, Oslo process, whatever you want to call this process, I had the opportunity with 3 other journalists to interview Yossi Beilin, the architect of this process. And Dr. Beilin, they said, well, what's going to be with UNRWA and the refugees and, the fact that they're still pushing right of return, which they were in the first 3 months of the peace process. They said, we were going back to where we came from in 48, and every day it was in the what was then the Palestinian media, just these memos used to come out. He says, not to worry. We have an understanding that when the Palestinian Authority comes to be on May 1st, 1994, the first thing they'll do will be to take down the refugee camps and to abandon the refugee right of return and to absorb the refugees inside the Palestinian Authority. Well, next drum roll, please. On May 1st, 1994, the first decision of the Palestinian Authority was to adopt the concept of right of return and to make sure the refugee camps would remain in their place to encourage right of return and keep people in the refugee camps so that all aid coming into the PA would not affect the refugees. And another drum roll, if you don't mind. There was they've started a new Arab state in Ruwayda. Robbie, I can never compare. All the people around me speak Arabic except for yours truly. The guy who runs the operation doesn't always know the proper terminology. It doesn't matter. A new Arab village, Ruwayda, Robbie, whatever, is near Ramallah, and they advertised all over the world that they would have a new city that would be able to absorb all the people from the refugee camps, people with tenements, people that don't have enough place to live. And guess what? The new Palestinian Authority city has not allowing refugees to live there. Good morning, okay? This is stuff that people need to know in terms of and I'm speaking forgive me, but I have a social work degree. And that's what I'm a social worker first and a journalist second. And this is an absolute aberration of social work concepts. That you'll have a social work agency like UNRWA, which is devoted to what they call the right of return at a time when the right of return can never be achieved, and keeping people in their squalor, in their muck on that premise. And that's what we're fighting.
Again, this is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio, Root Sheva, show Messiah Makasset as Messiah Hour on YouTube. You can email me, messiahhour@gmail.com. Again, continuing the conversation with David Bedein of Israel Resource News Agency. Now, Mr. Bedein, let's talk about UNRWA's budget, because I understand it's in the billions, and you mentioned earlier that 25% of that money comes from the United States. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, $200 million comes from the United States.
So this is tax-paid money. This is the American taxpayers that are paying for this.
That's right.
Are they aware what their money's going to?
Are you kidding me? The level of ignorance in my home country, the United States, you can tell. I speak some English. I grew up in Philadelphia. That's a West Bank settlement, West Bank of the Delaware River. I was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is in the western part of Michigan. That's where I was born, of all places. My children have a problem telling people their friends I was born in the zoo, but that's okay. But understand one thing. Our friends in UNRWA, look, I'm an old guy. I'm 64, and I remember 50 years ago when cigarettes were declared to be the substance that can kill you. And what did the cigarette companies do? They hired R.J. Reynolds, hired all the top PR people and scientists to say it's good for you. So what does UNRWA do? UNRWA hires top people, top PR people, and they send out people from the refugee camps and everything like this that were helping the refugees in the camps, and now their big thing after the Gaza conflagration in the summer is give money to UNRWA so they can help people. Who would know just how bad it is that these people want to keep the people in their muck? But you don't know that when you meet these people, and so they pull the wool over everyone's eyes. And the organization of American Friends from UNRWA will do wonders to promote the idea that we're helping refugees and not noticing. Even last night on Israel Television, okay, Channel 1, Israel Television, okay, a woman from Israel TV who knows as much about UNRWA as she knows about the American baseball teams or whatever. She went into an UNRWA camp in Dahesha, and there's slogans all over the place. She didn't say what slogans, which are right of return, which is when we go into refugee camps, and we've made 7 movies, we'll hopefully make an 8th very soon. When we go and we translate what's on those camps, which is right of return, taking back our homes that we lost and which are now in Beit Shemesh. I warn my friends in Beit Shemesh, they're after your homes in Beit Shemesh, and they're after your homes in Har Nof, because they come from Be'er Yassin. No coincidence what happened a few weeks ago in Har Nof. Right there. It's right there. Kill the people who live in our homes, right? And there's whatever. And this lady walks through the refugee camps. And all they want is to take back pre-67 Israel. And if we get rid of the settlements and Har Choma, everything will be fine. That was what this was Israel Television, Israel Channel 1. Wow. Now, my wife always says to me, don't sound too excited when you're talking to the media because they think you're nuts. But understand something. How can you not get upset when you know that a woman walks right by a sign which Arabic says the right of return or die, and she says, these are slogans which say we want the West Bank. Hello? They don't want the West Bank or the East Bank or any bank, not even Bank of Paul Ali. They want to go back to where they came from in 48. And that's not something that's inculcated from some kind of people who came from Mars or the moon. It's inculcated from one source and one source only, the UNRWA, which is funded through the U.S., and the European Union, and 38 democratic countries. And also the government of Israel sitting back and letting it happen. And this is what we have to fight to make sure it stops.
All right, so many questions based on that answer. Let's start first, the Har Nof attack, the terrible terrorist attack a few weeks ago.
Sure.
You're saying that was not a random thing. They specifically targeted.
Not at all. Not only that, but I've been warning for many, many years. And I had that there's a 15 years ago, I wrote a piece in Jewish Action, which is published by the Orthodox Union, where after I was, and it was in my first book, which was called "Where Has All the Flour Gone," and we put out the documentation that there's a website that's been developed called PalestineRemembered.com, which acts as a guide for every child in every UNRWA camp how to locate the homes your families came from in '48 and how to take them back by force.
Wow.
And that's the most important thing to understand. And that only 10 days before the Har Nof attack, there was a group of both young people and old people from the area scene gathering on Rehov Kafei Shireen in front of a synagogue, which used to be the boys' school of the area scene, saying, "We're going to take this back by force, and we're going to live here, and we're going to kick the Jews out of here." I interviewed at that time, 15 years ago, Daoud Barakat, when he started this project. They started they had bus trips going all the time to Arab neighborhoods and Arab villages, but especially what were Arab neighborhoods in Jerusalem, and so pointing out their homes that they're going to take back. I said, "Well, but there's people living there." He says to me, and we have this on tape, "They'll have to leave, and what if they don't leave? Then we'll have to kill them." And then he asks, "And how do you like your coffee?" In other words, you have to understand this is a very natural, very systematic way. It's so systematic that people would I always call it Cleopatra syndrome. You know what that is? She was the queen of denial. Okay, think about it. Listen, if I don't laugh in my work, I would jump out of my window, except that I had bars on my window because we were raided eight years ago by certain people, and our computer was stolen, so we now have bars on the window. So if I try to jump out the window, it's a Polish suicide. But please understand. You can go a little crazy. You can go crazy or have a sense of humor in my work. Right. I prefer to have a sense of humor. But it's Cleopatra syndrome, the queen of denial. It affects everybody. I put out a note to the OU just to give a lecture to explain what happened in Har Nof and the real story behind it. And 15,000 people read the announcement, and 8 people showed up for my lecture. That's about where it's at in terms of people wanting to deal with reality. People said, when I called different people in Har Nof, they said, "Well, you added an hour to our tefillah." You can add 2 hours to our tefillah, but if somebody is coming to rob your house or kill you, you don't daven an extra hour. You call the police, right? Right. But tell that to people who went to the Kotel in Gush Katif, before Gush Katif, instead of surrounding members of Knesset's homes. But that's besides the point. I'm a realist. I'm a community organizer, a social work community organizer by profession. I studied with the real Saul Alinsky, not the Alinsky Foundation that Obama studied with. You got to get out there and work with the people to bring the story home and let people know what's really going on, no matter what.
All right. Well, good. So much more to talk about. Again, if you're just joining us, this is a prophecy here on Israel National Radio, Root Sheva. Email me, MessiahHour@gmail.com, and go to YouTube to find this show as the Messiah Hour. Again, continuing the conversation with David Bedein, the head of Israel Resource News Agency. I have to ask you this. I know it's not about our topic, but 8 years ago, someone took your computers and your information from your office?
Yes, 8 years ago. Yeah, we were raided at the time. We were investigating Israel's prime minister, whose name is Ehud Olmert. We were investigating his corporate connections with the Palestinian Authority, and someone came into our office and grabbed our computers. I was out in Canada at the time making an appearance at the Canadian Parliament about UNRWA with a staff of people, and my interns called the next morning and said, we're sorry to tell you there was a break-in. I said, I'm sorry about the 600 shekels that was in the drawer for you. I said, no, they didn't take the 600 shekels. They took your computers, they took your disks, and they took your fax. And, the story in Omer didn't come out, except that later on lots of stuff has come out, but his investments in the Palestinian Authority never did come out. And one day that will also come out. Well, he's, someone's getting him a cell phone.
What?
You can get a cell phone,
wow.
for Mr. Olmert. Anyway, that's a joke. Anyway, cell phone. If I have to explain my humor on your show, forget about it. But the point is that this will also come out. In the year 2000, we put out a very important news story about Ehud Olmert's, Shimon Peres's investments in the Palestinian Authority, and in the Palestinian in the Palestinian telephone company, which was later on verified. It was hard to believe, but there it was. So, it's very interesting how you can make money while promoting peace.
So this break-in was while Olmert was prime minister, correct?
Yes, correct.
So, I mean, the coincidence is certainly, there's not much of a coincidence there. I mean, how do you feel personally that, as far as we know, that where it looks, the prime minister had your office broken into and your property stolen?
Well, I mean, I feel important. What can I tell you? Listen. Most people, the way most people deal with me is like a gadfly. Swat them away. Let's ignore them. That's the way people deal with yours truly. And that's the way you deal with. There's two ways to deal with investigative journalists. You either kill them or you ignore them. But if you ignore them, they go away. They think they're going to go away. But right now, our material at UNRWA is in so many people's hands that even if yours truly were to be sent to the Islamabad tomorrow morning, it's in enough people's hands to deal with. This is very nice. Our project now is going to 20 parliaments in the world, one at a time. And next month, hopefully, if we get the support, we need the support to do it, we're sending experts to the U.S. Congress to show the new session of Congress exactly what's going on with this issue so people know. Let my people know is the theme that we use. And not enough people know you have a Messiah hour. I have a Let My People Know hour. What can I tell you? People have to know what's going on. It's basically a fraud, this issue of keeping people in refugee camps under false premises. And it's not only a Jewish issue or an Israeli issue. This is an issue of accountability.